Welcome to our Brave Feminine Leadership podcast, where I get to dive into delicious conversations with global leaders and I get to explore their perspectives on life and leadership. And today I am super excited to introduce Kate Christie. Kate, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Melissa.
My absolute pleasure. Let me just share briefly with the audience some of your bio so they get a better understanding of who you are and what we're going to talk about. So Kate is Australia's top time management expert to clients including Bupa, Westpac, Specsavers and L'Oreal. Kate's a sought-after media commentator, has worked as a corporate lawyer, a senior executive and run her own businesses, all while managing a family, and for the last 6 years as a single mum. Kate has taught thousands globally how to save more than 30 precious hours a month in time and then how to use that time to design and live their best lives. As the best-selling author of 5 books, Kate's spoken to audiences around the world, and today she's joining the Brave Feminine Leadership conversation. As I said, thrilled to have you here, Kate. I'm going to borrow a line from your wonderful book, The Life List, and I'm going to ask you to share with us what's your backstory and how does that connect through to your future story?
Okay. Oh, lovely question. Look, in terms of backstories, we've all got one, right? We don't get to our age, whatever that may be, without having a backstory. Everyone's had trauma and life experiences, and my personal backstory was that I married very young. I used to joke that I was a child bride. I wasn't, but I sort of felt like one. And I look back at the wedding photos and I honestly looked like I was about 12.
Yeah.
I was 24, but I did look young, and was married for 22 years, 3 incredible children, and was just at that point in my life where I was looking to design the next stage. My kids were all at high school. My boys were at the top end of high school, and just at that sort of stage where I felt like, oh my God, it's almost done. It's almost my turn. And I'd started my own business. I'd previously been a lawyer and worked in the top levels as a senior executive in corporate, and had all of those multitude of experiences, mother, professional, executive, business owner, wife, daughter, all of the roles that I think we all play. And my husband one day, sort of after 22 years of marriage, sat me down and said that he didn't love me anymore and that he wanted to leave our marriage and to start again. And it was a blind side. It was I wasn't anticipating it. All marriages have their ups and downs. I get that. And on reflection, I think we were in a down. But I wasn't anticipating that. I honestly felt like we were a partnership.
Yeah.
And that we had got through the hardest kind of years, and that it was almost our turn and we were going to be designing this future together. And honestly, I just felt like not only my kind of present and my past had sort of been stolen, but my future had been stolen. I had all these bloody plans, and we were, we'd been together since I was 23, and our lives were intertwined. Our finances, our families, our friendship groups, like everything is intertwined. And you have this unraveling of all of that. And I'm not unique in that, and I completely understand that. But it was a really challenging experience and time for me. And I think the other thing was at the time that we performed to our strengths and in roles and in partnerships. And one of my husband's strengths was, he did our finances, and he tried, to his credit, forever and ever to get me involved and to explain it. And I was just, no, I'm no good at maths. And all of a sudden I was in this space where I had to play catch up really quickly. And the learning curve in elements of my life and you're bruised and you're wounded and you're trying to play catch up. And it was really challenging. Then I focused on my children, and I focused on having to develop my business very quickly. I remember him saying, you might have to go back and get a real job. And I remember being, horrified at the thought of having to go back into the corporate world. But also, I guess, you know, it was like he'd thrown down the gauntlet, and I was like, well, you know, bugger you, mate, I'm going to do this. So I sort of just felt like we were getting back on track. You know, my business was going well, the kids were okay. My partner, my ex-husband, and I had sort of formed a different type of relationship, and we were co-parenting. And it was March 2020, COVID had just hit. And he came over to see the kids, and he said that he wasn't well. He'd been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and within 12 months he'd passed away. And he was only 54, and it was every part as bad as you could imagine that scenario being, with three children who having to nurse them through the incredibly rapid deterioration of their dad, in circumstances where everyone was, you know, self-isolating, and whilst they were allowed to visit him legally, it became challenging because they couldn't give him any illnesses, and I was restricted in terms of how far I was able to travel with them, and it was just incredibly confronting. And I think that experience of watching him deteriorate, you know, he was my husband for 22 years, and he was the funniest, most gregarious, incredibly full of life personality. He was one of those people just, you know, walk in and the room would light up, and then he was gone. And it completely changed my perspective on how I wanted to live my life. And I talk about that in the book, about, you know, we all have a backstory. You know, everyone's got a sad story. Yeah. And it informs you and informs your life, but it doesn't define you, and it certainly doesn't dictate what your future story is going to be. And I guess that was his parting gift to me, was that realisation that life's too short. It brutally short, and that I needed to really take control and design out what I wanted my life to look like, and I did. And I guess that's what the life list is all about. It's the opposite of a bucket list. It's designing and doing everything you want to do while you're still young enough to love it and enjoy it, and taking responsibility for the fact that, you know, I might get hit by a bus tomorrow. So right. I want today to be perfect.
Yeah. Kate, I mean, firstly, gosh, I'm so sorry that you and your family went through that. I've got a little bit of experience with breast cancer myself, and losing my mum early to cancer too. So, you know, I can understand that. And I just wonder, it just occurs to me as I'm listening to you talk then, I know for me that was a big experience that gave me an opportunity. I stepped out of my CEO role at that point in time, gave me an opportunity to kind of go, you know what, I can create a different path and do something different, and off I go. Do you think, you know, and you and I both work with a lot of leaders at probably pivotal points in their life as well. Do you feel like for a lot of people there needs to be some big trigger, or, you know, I just wonder, how possible is it to step into something like a life list without that?
Yeah, that's such a great question, because unfortunately for me, it was that life-informing event, and it really was that slap and the wake-up call that I needed to stop being so complacent. But that's why I wrote the book, because I want other women in particular, I guess the book is targeted at, but I've certainly got a lot of male readers. I want people to read it and take control of their lives without having the big shake-up, without having that monumental loss or trauma or life-changing experience. I want them to read it and think, there, but for the grace of God go I, and I need to do things differently. And I think that was definitely why I wrote the book, and it's definitely working. I woke up to an email yesterday. A woman had picked up the book at the Townsville airport, and she'd read it on the plane, and she sent the email at 2 a.m. and she said, I've been reading this book since, you know, my 6 p.m. flight, and it's now 2 a.m. And she said, I'm doing things differently. You know, I'm 54 and I'm not going to be complacent. And I've just registered for a bike, cross-country bike ride, and I'm going to do this. And I'm going to go get all my moles checked on my skin. I don't want skin cancer. And so I think that you know, the message is coming through loud and clear. And it's also, the book is very much written from that perspective of women around midlife, whatever that definition means to you, because I think we are in a stage or a state of incredible transformation at the age that I'm at. I'm 53, turning 54, and turning 50 was really kind of pivotal. And it was obviously happening at a time when Dan was sick, and he died just before I turned 51. And I guess it was just this big collision of all of these things occurring as I turned 50 that made me sit back and think, wow, this is a really transformative moment. And I had friends around me sort of talking about, you know, midlife crisis, and I was like, hell no, you know, I'm not in crisis mode. This is a catalyst. You know, this is an opportunity for me to come out of the cocoon and spread my wings and fly. And I think a lot of women, and I spoke to a lot of women as I was writing the book about their experiences with, you know, women who were maybe empty nesting or almost empty nesting, or women without children who were still carrying that judgment of not having had children, and they're in their 50s and they're still carrying that judgment. And women who have, you know, CEOs or C-suite execs who've climbed the corporate ladder and worked their asses off, and they get to this age and they think, well, what next? Now? What next? You know, I've spent so much time climbing this bloody ladder. How on earth do I even get off it? And we're asking ourselves these questions as intelligent women of our age, and I think it's a huge time of transformation. The other thing that's really fascinating to me about us as a cohort is our consumer power. You know, Forbes describes women in their 50s as super consumers. We are the most educated, the fittest, youngest, most cashed up women in their 50s ever. You know, you think of your parents as 50-year-olds, you think of your grandmother as a 50-year-old. We are worlds apart, and we have this huge array of choices before us. And I'm just like, hell yeah, I'm choosing it all. It's my turn.
Can I take you back, Kate, to your very successful corporate career? And there was a moment, and I bring this up because there's so many people in our audience who are kind of 35 to 55-year-old, and hello, if you're outside of either of those, you're all welcome. But most people are, and a lot still in their corporate careers, and, you know, asking some of the questions that you've just raised there. You talk about a pivotal moment where you arrived at a meeting and looked around, and I think you were running late for the meeting, and realised you were the only person in the room without a wife. So I can't help but wonder, with everything you know now, and, you know, clearly I'm picking up on maybe your time management, but you're so much more than that and broader than that. Is there anything you know now that could have changed that time in your life, or that pivotal moment that could have seen you in a sliding doors moment stay in a corporate career?
Yeah, 100%. And it was like, that was probably, apart from Dan's death, that is sort of the pivotal sliding door moment in my life. And it's what started me down this path of time management, because I was the senior executive. I had 3 very little children. I was working full time. I was also the primary carer. My husband was a barrister, and, you know, if you had to be in front of the judge, you had to be in front of the judge. You know, there was less flexibility in his role. I also, you know, and I write about this a lot, there was expectations I put on myself to be the one. Yeah. You know, if the kids were sick, I had to be at home, and I had to take them to the hospital, and I had to sit up all night with them, you know. So it wasn't just that I had a husband who didn't contribute as much. It was like I was doing this stuff to myself. Yeah. But that was, you know, once I and the pivotal moment was that I decided, you know, I'm a mum like all the other school mums, and I was going to take my son to school and drop him off on my way to my meeting, and got to school and it was cupcake day. I was like, who the fuck comes up with these ideas?
Yeah.
Right? It's not working mums, that's for sure. And I'd missed that memo. So there's everyone with their trays of cupcakes. My son was hysterical.
Oh.
I had snot from the corner of my suit right down my arm, and all these other people.
And only half of that was yours.
I think it was all mine. And I dropped him and I drove to work with I was radiating guilt. And I got into the board meeting and, I was late and everyone stopped and they looked at their watches and they looked at me and there was just this silence, like this pin drop silence. And then they just kept talking like I wasn't even there. And I had this profound realisation that I was the only member of the executive leadership team that didn't have a full-time wife.
Yeah.
And I just thought, what the hell am I doing? And in my mind at that point in time, I felt that I had backed myself into a corner.
Yeah.
And I thought, honestly, I still remember it so clearly, I honestly felt like I had two choices. I could either be a great mum or I could have a great career. And it was so black and white to me, which obviously it wasn't. But at that moment in time, my guilt was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And not just guilt about the kids. If I was at work, I felt guilty about the kids. If I was with the kids, I felt guilty about work.
Yes.
So I made this choice, I have to be a great mum. I can't give the kids back. But it was through that process then of resting and look, I was probably burnt out. I was definitely overwrought. I went into hermit mode for a little while. I used to shop in sunglasses and headphones so I didn't have to talk to anyone because I felt this incredible shame that I had not succeeded. And, I remember also, the kids sort of saying things to me like, oh, you're the only mum who's never there. You're the only mum who doesn't come to sports day. And I remember sort of 2 weeks after I'd resigned and it was sports day and I thought, oh, my God, I'm going to be there with the mums. And I turned up at 9 a.m. and I was dressed in red because my kids were in Gem House, which was red. And I was fully, into this. I was the only one there. I was just like, you little bastards. All this time I've been carrying this guilt. And then all the mums rocked up at 3:10 for the relay, which is just the last race of the day.
Yes.
Anyway, so I took the time to learn time. I have always been pretty organised. Certainly at that point in time I felt completely overwhelmed. But I really dug deep in terms of time and productivity and efficiencies and time management, and with a view of solving it for myself to say, hey, what other choice could I have had here? Which ultimately opened the door to me becoming an expert, writing books about this for other women, speaking about it, because all of a sudden I realised there were so many women who felt like me. And I wrote those books and I coached those women with the intention of no one ever having to feel that they have to make a choice between two things they love for want of time.
Yes.
So it was absolutely sliding door. But if I'd known then what I had educated and known now, I would never have had to leave that amazing, magnificent job.
Yeah.
And I could have done both for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I went through the door that slid that way because I've got to live this incredible life. But,
that's right.
100% I would have done it differently, 100%.
Yeah, and I asked that question with you live a magnificent life, and we would all be, the poorer for you not having gone down that path. But I'm just fascinated, and just quickly before we move off of that, if you had to say there were two things that could have made the biggest impact, what would they have been? So 2 tips based on what you know now for people who are in that situation right now.
The first would be external to you. The first would be to seek out a mentor or a champion who has your back and who will talk you out of making a decision that you may be making from an emotional or an exhaustion point of view.
Yes.
So have that person, and to be honest, based on my own experience, I think that that person should be a male champion, because I think that they look at this stuff through a different lens. I think that they give women leaders a different perspective. And I think that their point of view around women staying in a senior role, for better or worse, holds a lot more gravitas than a female champion or mentor. And that's just unfortunate, but that's been my experience. So that the first thing I would say is have that person as your sounding board and as your champion. The second thing I would say is to make sure that I guess you have perspective across the decision you're going to be making. And think about it from your career, and I do this now as a business owner. Think about your decision not in terms of, well, is this job working for me or not, but think about it in terms of, do I want a lifestyle role or do I want an executive type career? If I want an executive type career where I'm climbing the ladder and I become the C-suite or I become the CEO, and then from their CEO I become a paid board member, and if I want that path, then that is going to help inform the decisions I make along the way. But if that's not the path for you, if you want a lifestyle career where I'll get as far as I can, but I'd really rather kind of work maybe 3 or 4 days a week and still earn terrific money, but I want to have a month off every year and I want to travel extensively, it's a different path. So don't kind of make the decision based on the role you're in. Make the decision based on the trajectory that you want.
And that's interesting, because I find with that, the option 2, right? Option 2 is go and build a lifestyle career. I find a lot of people are fearful of that step because they don't, and maybe it circles back around to the life list, but it's like, how do I know I can be successful in that space? You know, like it's a big step off. So
it's a huge step, and it's risk taking, but here's the thing, and it always boils down to this, is that your listeners are high performers.
They are.
You know, they wouldn't be attracted to this podcast unless they are a particular type of personality. They have always curated their own success in terms of being driven and working hard right from high school, right? They worked their asses off, they got into a degree, they worked their asses off, they got a good job, they worked their asses off, and they worked their way up the ladder. And oftentimes they may be in the right place at the right time, or they may be recognised as being a future leader, or they may just get the promotion because they've been there the longest, whatever. Here's the rub, is imagine the success that they could have had if they had curated goal-setting career moves the whole way through. Because most listeners or most people just happen to be in the right place at the right time. There's very few, and though if they're listening and they're the ones who have got a 5-year career plan, then you are in the minority. And I would be saying to everyone else, you know, you are high performers, so sit down and curate what that trajectory looks like and then go make it happen for yourself. And if you've always been successful in your roles, there is absolutely no evidence or data on the table that says you're not going to be successful if you curate a lifestyle type role. All the evidence in your corner is that you are a winner. You will make this work as well.
I want to ask about one of your life list goals, because I just want to know whether it's happened yet. And this was one to do with, I think, your teenagers or young adults now still living at home. And you talked about buying an apartment in the city that might semi-force the kids to move out. Have we got the apartment yet?
I have. I bought the apartment off the plan a couple of years ago, so they've had a long runway. It's going to be ready in October. My eldest is turning 24 in April, so I basically kind of said that, you know, 24 out the door policy. And we had a little bit of, and I also sold the family house, which was the huge, you know, McMansion, and moved into quite a small apartment, which has 4 bedrooms, but the boys bedrooms are tiny, and they both say that they've got the Harry Potter room, and they have like literally there's not even there's room for a bed, and they still stayed. And then we had a little bit of some toing and froing last year, where I was coming home after sort of travel or whatever, and the house looked like a bomb had gone off, and so I sort of tried the nice, come on, guys. And then the next time I sent a text message saying, okay, you all have to pay me, this is how much. It's not rent. This is cleaning money. And, went through that process. Anyway, the eldest moved out last week. So, and I miss him terribly. And I helped him move on the Saturday. I caught up with him for lunch on the Sunday. I had him over for dinner on Monday.
You might see more of him now that he's moved out, ironically.
Yeah.
I was talking to a girlfriend recently who talked about that, empty nester, and we've decided, I can't remember where I saw this, but it's not empty nester anymore. It's just doing our job, and our job is, I think it was like bird launcher or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And I don't want to have that relationship with my kids where they're still at home when they're 30. I just don't want that as a lifestyle choice for me.
Yeah.
So I will do what I can to encourage them out. And I understand that not everyone can afford to. But, I'm not paying his rent. He's working, and his partner is working, and they're both, contributing, and they've found a little apartment or a little house. And I've given my kids a very traditional 1970s upbringing. They've sort of had the same upbringing as me, and I keep saying, your dad and I were out of home by this stage, and it's not that I don't love you, but also they're ready to move out. They're sick of me.
Yes.
I mean, who wants to live with their mum?
No, and it probably is that you love them.
I drive them nuts.
Yeah.
I drive them nuts. I've got this new app on my phone, which is bloody fantastic, and it's basically like the stalker app. And so if their phones are connected, I can see where they are at any time of the day.
Yes.
And so I, at night it might be 2 a.m. and they're not home yet. So I've got three. I've got a 24-year-old, 23-year-old, and a 21-year-old, 20-year-old. And I track them, and I can see where they are. And then I send them text messages. Where are you? Why aren't you home? I woke up the other night, like at 3 a.m., and there were three of them were at Footscray Hospital. I thought, okay, great, what's happened? And so I said, you move out, I'm taking you off the stalker app.
Yes. So let me ask you a couple of questions now around, you talk about in the book about having go big, go small, or go now goals.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to write a book this year, what is that?
That's a go big goal, baby. That's a go big goal.
Okay.
Yeah, so go big, so the big, hairy, life-changing, audacious goals that have multiple moving parts that take us a while to achieve.
So
climbing the mountain,
it feels like a mountain. It feels like a mountain, that one. So I've got to get going. I've got to get the backpack on for that one. The next one is to learn to swim freestyle properly so I can compete in an ocean swim in January next year.
Oh, that's magnificent. Okay, that learning to swim properly is a go small goal, but the ocean swim part of it is a go big goal.
Okay, good, combining two. Simplifying my life, just paring back to the essentials across almost everything. How does that fit in?
That's a beautiful one. I did that major decluttering when I moved house, and just like literally just decluttered my life.
Yeah.
They're really nice, healthy go small goals, because you can do them within a month. You could do that within a week, where you diarise it all. And I did it in January again this year. I rang up all my insurers and got them to do a better deal on all the cars and a better deal on the house insurance. I rang up the health insurance and updated all the kids' stuff and got them to give me a better deal. I went and had all my health checks of my mammograms and just the life admin, and I just did it across 3 days. And that's go small, but really, really important. And you get a lot of momentum with those types of goals.
And all that clutter's out of your head too. Just all those things you've ticked off there is amazing. Getting naked in an onsen in Japan in December.
That's great. I love that. Well, look, I mean, that's probably going to Japan Japan as a trip is probably a go big goal, but the getting naked in the bar piece is a go small goal.
Okay.
If you were in Japan and you had no plans at all to get naked, and then someone said, hey, let's go get naked, that would be a go now goal, because it's an act of spontaneity that you hadn't really thought through.
I've got one of those, which is a girlfriend of mine. She's very good at life lists. I mean, she blows me away with all the things she's got. But she said to me, would I like to join her in a fighter jet?
Yeah, go now. That's a go now goal. 100%, because it wasn't on your radar and you're just like, what the fuck? Yeah. But I'm going to do it. So, yeah, go now.
Not sure.
I've got one of those girlfriends as well. Yeah, they're problematic, those types of friends.
I'm not 100% sure whether I'm going to do that or not. So, let's see. So, okay, I want to ask you about, and again, this comes from the book, and I think it's you talking about moments as well and the definition of moments and all sorts of things, which I loved. But I could take just 90 seconds of time to generate enough energy to open a brand new door. Tell me more.
Yeah. So I think as a time management expert, I've always loved the word moment. It's a word I use a lot. Just give me a moment. And when I was writing the book, I wanted to talk about moments. So I thought, well, I'll just get the proper, Oxford English definition to include in the book. And what I discovered, because I knew it was an element of time, but that was kind of as far as I knew. And what I discovered is that it's actually a homonym. So there are 3 different definitions to the word. The first is, yes, it is a unit of time. So a moment is 90 seconds. So just as a minute is 60 seconds, a moment is 90 seconds. And honestly, that just floats my boat big time. So next time you say to your kids, just give me a moment, you're asking for 90 seconds. Yeah. The second definition of the word moment is it's a unit of energy. And so when there's an earthquake, they measure the power of the earthquake by the moment magnitude scale. So it's a unit of energy. And then the third definition in physics is that it is a unit of force. So when anything pivots on an axis, or you open a door or a seesaw, is pivoting. That pivoting move is called a moment. And I thought, God, honestly, when I have thought about the goals that I've set in the past, and I think about my clients, and often we think about our goals in terms of these monumental actions, and we become so overwhelmed by the enormity of the goal that we've set that we don't go forward with it. It's just too hard. It's too much money. I don't have time. What will people think? We have all these reasons why we can't. And so I thought to myself, well, imagine if we just broke those steps down and just took 90 seconds of time to exert enough energy to open a new door. And when you break it down and you think about it, not the monumental, but think about the moments, you can do anything. You can change your life in 90 seconds. And once you step through that door, you're in motion. And the definition of mass in motion is momentum. So the word moment is in the word momentum, which is amazing. And then you have momentum and you get to create something momentous.
Amazing.
And so it's my favourite word in the world.
I love it. So what was your last go now goal?
Oh, gosh, that's good. My last go now goal, my scare, I'm pretty good at them now. They were the hardest for me. So I'm a goal setting girl. So go big goals, go small goals. I'm all over those, all over them. But I'm a time management specialist. My life is organised within each of its life. So I just don't do spontaneity ever. So they have been the hardest for me to do, so much so that I actually scheduled a month last year to be my go now month. I actually had to, I appreciate the irony of scheduling a month that you're going to be spontaneous. So that full month was full of go now goals. And I told my best friend, so, the fighter pilot friend, and I told my kids, and it was on for young and old. So I did some awful things that month that I would never ever do, but had a ball. But I went. We had to go. I had to go speed dating at a pub, which was just horrific. It was horrific. I went to a water park with the kids, and I had to go in my kids, and they're all in their early 20s. So when I say kids, it's not like they're 5. I mean, they're psychotic. And we went to the top of the kind of the highest mountain, and there was this perspex, what could only be described as a perspex coffin. And the door opened, and I had to, they made me go first because I'd said I was going to do all these things. And I stepped in, and the door closed. And seriously, this was like, 500 miles above the earth.
I'm sweating.
And you hear this metallic voice start counting down from 5, and they're all giving me the thumbs up, and I was absolutely petrified. And you got your hands like this, and you're standing up in this coffin, and the water's cascading, and it's 5, 4, and it gets to 1, and the floor just disappears, and you drop.
Yeah.
Horrific. So they were my go. I had a month of those. Which was fun, and it was really motivating, and I'm much more spontaneous now. So, people say, do you want to? And I'll say, yeah, like provided it's before 8 p.m. because I go to bed at like 8:30. If it's a daytime opportunity, I'm up for it.
I literally was sweating as you talked about that. So please do not ever ring me with our goal to suggest do that. There's plenty of stuff I'm happy to do, but that's not sounding like it's up my alley. I'm probably interesting in the sense that I'm probably more on the do more, go now, spontaneous stuff, and that ends up kind of overloading me. You know what I mean? Versus the planned out kind of space.
Yeah,
so
okay.
I love how
it's
we're
really
also
fascinating.
Different.
Yeah. One of my clients, we had exactly that discussion the other day. She's literally a go now girl, and I'm sort of coaching her and working through this process of setting a 5-year plan. Yeah. And it's just not something she's ever been able to contemplate because she is a go now girl.
Yeah, and FOMO. I mean, what if I miss out on that? I mean, that's just horrible.
I
know. Can't do that. So, Kate, you and I could talk for a very long time, but it's probably brought me to the point where I want to ask you the question I ask everyone, which is, what does brave feminine leadership mean to you, and do you think it needs to change?
It's such a beautiful question, and it's something I've been thinking about since you shared with me that was your sort of go-to question. And really what it comes down to me when I think of feminism and brave feminism, there's 2 people I think of that really sum that up for me. The first is my father. He was probably the most ardent feminist I've known in my life. He raised 3 daughters and instilled in us a love of learning and a love of opportunity and a drive that we could do or be anything that we wanted, and that there were just no barriers. So I was raised without any understanding or concept or grasp that there was any kind of gender debate to be had.
Yes.
So I think of him as a brave feminist, as a father in the 70s with that attitude. And the other person I think of when I think of brave feminism is my daughter. She is 20. She is the most forthright, intelligent, funny, terrifying woman I've ever come across. When she was 2, from the time she was 2, she would insist on dressing herself. She's always been headstrong, and she's always led with compassion and a conviction that her beliefs are utterly correct in every way. And I love her confidence in herself, and I love that she will fight with loyalty for her friends and for people who are more disadvantaged than her, and that she's fiercely, I wouldn't say overtly feminist, but again, like my dad, it's almost like it's just inherently part of her makeup that you don't even have to have a feminist discussion with her or a discussion or debate around feminism, because it just is. And so when I think of brave feminism, I think of them. And I think in terms of how it needs to be changed is less talking and about this and more doing, and have people like my dad and my daughter who just believe that everyone can do anything that they want, and we shouldn't even be having the discussion.
Kate, I love them already. I was lucky to have a dad like that in the 70s too, and it's such a gift to have been grown up in that sort of environment. And I just love hearing that story about your daughter. Thank you so much for joining the conversation. It's just been such a pleasure to have you here, and literally I could keep talking for a very long time.
It was really lovely talking to you, Melissa.